So let us discuss now what is a component life cycle. One little topic is remaining that I am trying to cover now. See, this is the official page of the Angular, right? An Angular component is having these many life cycle methods, right? See, a component has a life cycle managed by Angular. So first, creation of the object is always begin from the constructor, right? A component has a life cycle managed by Angular, right? Then ng-on changes in one method, ng-on init is one method, ng-do-check is one method, after content init, after content checked, after view init, after view checked, and ng-on destroy, right? So these are the life cycle hooks of the Angular component. Yes, in the same order they are going to get called, right? See, a component has a life cycle managed by Angular. Angular creates it by these, they are talking about these three methods now: ng-on changes, ng-on init, and ng-do-check. Angular creates it, it means component, renders it, creates and render its children, checks it when data bound properties are changed, means ng-do-check, and destroy it before removing from the DOM. Before removing from the DOM. Angular offers lifecycle hooks that provides visibility into these key life movements and the ability to act when they occur, right? The directive has the same set of the lifecycle hook minus the hooks that are specific to the component and the views, because directives are not having views and the template or the markup, right? So these are the lifecycle methods. So let us try one by one, right, what it does and what exactly meaning of this. See, ng-on changes is the first hook. Respond when Angular resets or the sets data bound input properties. If you have an input property and if you have changed some of the data, ng-on changes method is going to be called. The method receives the simple changes object, that's fine, that is a nullable object of the current and previous state values, called before ng-on init, and whenever one or more data bound input properties change. At the first time, this is going to be called before on init, and input values of your input properties are going to be changed. At that time, ng-on changes is going to be called. I'll show you what I mean to say, right? So we have lifecycle component already over here, right? And already they have implemented ng-on init, right? And what is the intention of the ng-on init? See, initialize the directive or component after Angular first displays the data bound properties. What they are saying, after assignment of your input and output properties, this function is going to be called at the first time. After constructor, right, first time ng-on changes and ng-on init. See, initialize the directive or component after Angular first displays the data bound properties. After Angular first displays the data bound properties and sets the directive and component input properties, called once after the first ng-on changes. So this is going to be called after this only once. Only once. So this is that lifecycle hook which is compared similar to the constructor, right? This is going to be called only once. Okay. Now ng-on init, and before this there is a one more call called as on changes. So here I can say on changes, okay, then ng-on init, and after that on changes, after that see on changes, on init, do check is the method. See, do check is the call. Then after the do check, there is a after content init is the method. After all these are interfaces. After content init, after content checked, after view init, after view checked, after content init, after view checked, and then right on destroy, on destroy, right. If you think that they are too big, you can write it like this, and that is a more preferable way, right, and this is a more preferable way likewise. Okay, this is a more preferable way to write it separately per line. Okay, now remember that you need to implement all these are interfaces. All these are interfaces with some methods. I'll show you ng on init. See, it's the interface with only one method, ng on init. It's an interface which is empty implementation like this. Now here what you can do is that in the sequence you can call on changes. It need to be implement to on changes, right. Then it would be implementing to another on changes. On init it would be, sorry, on init is already there. Then it would be implementing to do check. Then it would be implementing to after content init, right. Then it would be implementing to after content checked, right. Then after view init, right, after view init, after view checked, right, after view checked, and then on destroy, right, and then on destroy. So your class is implementing to these many methods or these many interfaces. Your component is implementing to these many interfaces. You don't need to implement all this all the time. Just as an example I am showing you, right. Remember that every interface, if you want to override the method, right, just copy this and attached ng, that becomes the method, right. So from the ng on changes is having only one method, which is nothing but the ng on changes. On init is having only one method, ng on init. Then do check is having that method, ng do check, right, ng do check. Then after content init, say ng after content init, then ng after, sorry, after content init, after content checked, right, after content checked. We'll discuss all these methods, don't worry. Then after view init we would be having here, after view init ng, after view init, and ng after view checked. Here you can say ng after view checked, and then ng on destroy. Here we can have ng on destroy like this. So here we have implemented all the lifecycle hook to our one of the component called as lifecycle component. I'll continue next thing in the next video. Okay.